is 10 a.m., so I will call this meeting to order. The chair notes there's a quorum present, and we'll do the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have a hearing that's scheduled at 10:05, and so in order to stay on that timeline, I think I'm going to jump ahead and just take care of 3.0, which is additions and revisions to the agenda. Works for me. Did you guys have any changes? Anything you want to pull from the consent agenda?
The executive session minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we will go ahead and pull 5.3 from the consent agenda, and I assume table until December 18th.
Yes.
Okay. Any other additions or revisions? Okay. We still have 4 minutes, so let's do correspondence and public comment. Start with public comment. Just to note, we'll actually do a public comment for the planning thing as part of that hearing, so this is just a general public comment kind of thing. Individuals wishing to address the county court may do so at this time and at other times throughout the meeting. Speakers are asked to raise your hand to be recognized by the chair, give your name and address, and limit comments to 3 minutes. Is there anybody who has a public comment outside of the planning hearing?
Just noticing there's Frontier Telnet's not listed on the agenda as a discussion item, and I just wondered if there could be a thumbnail at some point during the meeting.
On an update on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that during my court reports.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Let me just make a note here so I don't forget. Any other public comments? Okay. Quickly, we'll just do correspondence. We have 2 letters that came in, and I will go ahead and read both of them. The first is from Colleen Cunningham, who I think is the chair or the president of the Arlington Library Board. She wrote, Dear Judge, Farrar and Commissioners, on behalf of the Arlington Public Library, I would like to thank you for funding our grant request for $22,000 for the upcoming 2019-2020 year. As you know, APL serves the community of Arlington and well beyond as a source of reading material, internet access, educational and cultural programs, and answers to burning questions that passerby may have. We will continue to fill these local needs and others thanks to your support. Again, thank you for helping Arlington Public Library realize its mission to the Arlington community. Sincerely, Colleen Cunningham. The second one comes to us from Nathan Welp, and this is regarding the state of Jefferson's public comments that were made during the last regular meeting that we had. I think I have time to read it. When the local members of the secessionist State of Jefferson group appeared before the Gilliam County Court requesting support for their divorce from Salem, I hope the court will recognize the absurdity of their mission. The SOJ's notion that their grievances can only be remedied by taking bits of Oregon and California and forming an underfunded superstate should be soundly rejected. There are many reasons to be skeptical of a state of Jefferson. A read through their various official websites and social media discussion groups quickly reveals that while there is plenty of angry rhetoric denouncing politicians and fellow citizens that live in the more populous areas of the 2 states, little to no planning has gone into the practical considerations of forming a new state. For example, their model of projected economic viability of an SOJ is centered around a cursory study of economic data from a few Northern California counties. By taking this data and gambling on the notion that the more prosperous counties in that area will agree to secede, and why would they want to join forces with less prosperous Oregon counties, SOJ is projected to be a success, a dubious claim at best. Further, there is no plan for the legal acquisition of Oregon, California state-owned resources like public universities, roads, and their associated maintenance equipment and prisons. Not the safest plan for prisons. Indeed, they decide they're going to just assume ownership and figure out the details later. The same goes for state and federally owned lands. Just take them by fiat and rely on an overconfident self-assurance that things will work out fine. Besides the lack of planning, the angry rhetoric of the SOJ is something I would hope the Gilliam County Court would weigh and reject. One of their central contentions is the idea that the rural-urban divide in both the governmental and social arenas is irreparable, and the only way to address it is to pack up and leave. They frame this problem and its solution in terms of revolution and a rebellion. Indeed, the idea that rural folks are in a state of a soft civil war with urbanites and the Oregon state government comes up frequently on local SOJ's Facebook discussion group. This kind of talk lends a sense of urgency and desperation to their successionist agenda and reinforces the us versus them mentality. There's plenty of that sort of thinking everywhere today, and none of it is helpful or productive. The declaration the State of Jefferson group will ask the Gilliam County Court to endorse sends a bad message. Gilliam County should not be a place where, when we are confronted with problems, we refuse to engage and instead look for easy, half-baked, and ultimately more costly and risky ways out. Rather, we should work towards understanding and reconciling the differences in the rural and urban areas, choosing effective representation in state and federal government, and advocate for the people and unique interests of rural counties in Oregon and California. Respectfully, Nathan Webb. All right, so we will head back up to 2.0, which is a public hearing. This is a public hearing on Gilliam County Ordinance number 2019-03, an ordinance amending the county zoning and land development ordinance to adopt text amendments to include a new defined use, community gathering place, and make other changes. This hearing is now called to order. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. The staff will give their report and answer any questions from the county court. Following the staff report, I will open the hearing for public testimony. After the opportunity for public testimony, the county court may have additional questions for staff. I will then close the hearing, and the county court will discuss and consider the matter. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record. Please keep your testimony concise and relevant to the issues before us this morning. All testimony should be directed towards the county court and not to other members of the audience. For the deliberations this morning, the applicable criteria are listed in the staff report. These are the criteria the county court must use to make its decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the county court and all parties an opportunity to respond to an issue may preclude an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue, and may preclude an action in circuit court. At this time, I would ask the members of the county court to disclose any conflicts of interest a member may have pertaining to limited industrial zoned land in Gilliam County. Please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict of interest and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. Any conflicts to declare? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the ability of any member of the county court to hear this matter? Don't see any. We'll have staff come up to present a report. While Michelle's doing that, there is a clipboard out in the audience, so if you're interested in providing public testimony, if you could just make sure that you sign in, that would be fantastic. Staff will now present a staff report and any correspondence on this matter other than those items already included in the record. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Commissioners and Judge. So for the record, the staff report was sent to the county court members a week ago, 7 days prior to the hearing, which is required by law. That has been entered into the record, so I'm not going to read this word for word. I'm going to assume everyone had the pleasure of perusing the document.
Yes.
Seems very lengthy, but I'm going to hit some highlights.
Okay.
And then, again, at the end of the highlights, if there's questions from the members, I'll answer those.
Okay.
So today, the Gilliam County Planning Department staff report proposed findings and conditions for approval for a text amendment to the Gilliam County Zoning and Land Development Ordinance as prepared for the county court on December 4th. The planning file department number is L-2019-02. The applicant was the Lori, care of Rodney McGuire. Property owner is the city of Arlington. Potential property location is described. It's approximately 40 acres. It's up next to the airport development. Airport property for the city of Arlington. It's outside of the city of Arlington. It's outside of the urban growth boundary for the city of Arlington. But it is in that general vicinity of city-owned land, because the city, for those that aren't aware, The city does own all of the airport development property and some additional land that goes down the hill, and it's all industrial or various components of industrial land. This particular 40 acres is in county jurisdiction for planning, and it is currently zoned limited industrial. So the text amendments are just specific to the limited industrial zone lands in the unincorporated areas of Gilliam County. The amendments will provide for and regulate community gathering places in all zones of properties located in the unincorporated portions of Gilliam County. However, the proposal is to specifically apply the limited industrial zone land in the unincorporated areas of Gilliam County. And what I mean by that is community gathering place is a new definition being proposed to put into the Gilliam County Zoning Ordinance. By including this definition into the ordinance, it can be applied to any other zone. So it could be applied to the exclusive farm use, it could be applied to other industrial lands the county has jurisdiction over. There's general industrial, there's intermodal zone. So even though we're only specifically talking about the limited industrial zone, this would open up an avenue in the future should there be a request to include this into other zones, or if the county says, you know what, let's include this in other zones, the county can make that choice as well. But today we're just going to focus on limited industrial. The procedure type, it's important to note that this is a legislative public hearing. That means at least 2 public hearings, one by the Gilliam County Planning Commission and one by the Gilliam County Court. And it requires an ordinance to be adopted if approved by the county court. Then I list applicable state laws. We had to provide so much notice to the Department of Land Use and Conservation regarding this amendment. We had to provide notice in the Times Journal. Before the public hearings, we had to provide, there's various components. I document that we did meet those deadlines. Today's proposal. The purpose of the public hearing is to consider proposed amendments to the Gilliam County Zoning and Land Development Ordinance to provide a definition for community gathering place in the definition section of the ordinance. Further, the community gathering place would be added as a conditional use in the limited industrial zone, which is known as M-L. In section 4.050B1G. Finally, certain standards for the community gathering place would be added to the conditional use standards in Article 7, Section 7.020, Article X. Process, we talked about the 2 public hearings. And then we note in the staff report, so this is page 3, the applicable state law that we had to comply with. When we're referring to page 3 and 4, and when we go into some of the other components of the staff report, this is where in the public notice it says the applicable criteria. So when you see in the staff report it says a finding, staff has to make a finding that the applicable criteria has been met or has not been met. And so that's why when you're reading through the staff report, it says here's the finding. It's the process most planning departments use in documenting how they get to the point of coming forth with a proposal. It's kind of standard, but I recognize right now that you might not be familiar with the layout of the staff report, and I could have provided a definition, but hopefully you guys figured that out when you're moving forward.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Yes, it was well done, Michelle.
Yes, very informative.
It takes a long time. So there are 2 documents that govern land use for the county. There's the comprehensive plan, which refers to goals, and the goals are statewide goals. And so the county has to acknowledge that we are meeting the statewide planning goals, which there are, I believe, 15, but some of them don't apply to Gilliam County. And so going through pages 5 through 10, that is the section of the staff report that refers to the comprehensive plan and showing documentation that we have, Gilliam County staff has documented that we are making findings that we're in compliance with this and we can move forward with this, and we're bringing it to the county courts. I'm going to pause for a moment. Were there any questions regarding the goals? I mean, I don't really want to hit all of them in this, but I can just hit the goals again. I'll reiterate, are statewide planning goals that the county had to show back in the early 70s, late 70s, excuse me, early 80s when we first adopted a comprehensive land use plan that we met. And we've done some periodic updates to the comprehensive plan, but it hasn't been reviewed, I don't think, since 2005. So we used the current document that was adopted by the court, and then I went through and developed findings for that. The goals, I'll just hit the goals so that the public knows what the goals were. We have to address and notice that there was citizen involvement. There's land use planning as a goal. Goal 3 is agricultural lands. Goal 4 is forest lands. Goal 5, natural resources, scenic and historic areas and open spaces. Goal 6, air, water, and land resource quality. Goal 7, areas subject to natural hazards. Goal 8, recreational needs. Goal 9, economic development. And I'm going to pause right here in economic development. This is the one area in which the applicant provided documentation or encouragement for making this text amendment that it will provide economic development by allowing this new use to be allowed in the limited industrial zone. And so I have summarized some of the areas the applicant pointed out and staff concurred or found other points to acknowledge for economic development. I will look right here on, for those that are following the county court, this is page 9. And just to let the court know, there is approximately 6,000 acres of industrial zone land in Gilliam County. And approximately there's 4,621 zoned acres that are predominantly undeveloped of that 6,000. So I think that's important to note because that was a question that came up amongst the Planning Commission. In the grand scope of Gilliam County, 6,000 acres isn't a lot, but it's underutilized at this time. And so it was a discussion, if we add more uses to that zone, are we going to eliminate development or narrow that scope? Because in order to get additional industrial land in Gilliam County, we have to go through a very elaborate process with the state of Oregon to get additional industrial lands. When we get further to the staff report, the court will be able to find, and I'll point out that this is tailored for, this particular process today is tailored for this applicant. That's not to say others can't take advantage of the language and we can't use it in other zones, but there was care taken in crafting the draft ordinance and the draft language to fit this project need, to help conserve and protect our industrial land. Okay. Goal 10 is housing, goal 11 is public facilities and services, goal 12, transportation, goal 13, energy conservation, goal 14, urbanization. So that summarizes the statewide planning goals, and I'm going to move into the other document that governs land use planning in Gilliam County, and that is the Gilliam County Zoning and Land Development Ordinance. This is the document that regulates anything that comes into the planning office, as simple as doing a barn, doing a house. This is the document that gets into the specifics of how we entertain and we permit and allow things to take place in the jurisdictional lands of Gilliam County planning. The comprehensive plan is the big goals. And this is what we want, and this is the document that breaks that down and say, how do we implement those goals? How do we take care of those goals? I'm going to preface one moment here. In the Gilliam County Zoning and Land Development Ordinance, for those that, the state of Oregon Department of Land Use and Conservation highly regulates exclusive farm use land. Most of Gilliam County is exclusive farm use land, so there isn't a lot of leeway in that section of the processes that I have to follow. The state is very regulatory for that section. So the limited industrial land, which we're talking about today, is very discretionary to the county, and the county has a lot of discretion on what they would like to allow in industrial zone lands or rural residential lands. Exclusive farm use, we're pretty much, our hands are tied in what, in order, we must comply with what the state says we have to do for that section, but limited industrial lands. It really is up to the discretion of the court and the citizens what they want to do with those lands. Okay, I'll keep moving forward. Okay, I'm going to move to page 13. Page 13 starts the process where I tried to identify the proposed text amendments, what the changes would look like, and I also included notes from the Planning Commission public hearing. So the county court has a summary of anything that was mentioned during that may have changed the course of what was initially introduced at that public hearing. So Article 1 is the introductory provisions and definitions, and here's where we're proposing to add community gathering place. And you'll note that center is crossed out. It was proposed that the definition be titled Community Gathering Center. After some discussion amongst the planning commissioners, they like the word place. So that's what's been inserted and proposed to the county court today, that the definition title be Community Gathering Place. The definition being proposed to the county court today for consideration is a site or structure designed and dedicated as a place for community events owned and operated by a nonprofit or government entity. Community events include public meetings or events, weddings, reunions, club gatherings, dances, dinners, and other similar group activities. You can see that the last sentence has been stricken out. That was a recommendation from the Planning Commission. And I will note when we get to the end of this, if there's any of the recommendations from the Planning Commission that the court does not agree with, the court can propose amendments and changes to those. So that would summarize section 1 of the definitions, and then we would go to Article 4, which is use zones. And the Gilliam County Zoning and Land Use Development Ordinance, all of the various zones are under one article, Article 4. And so you have lots of subsections in Article 4. The first subsection deals with airport development, and then it goes into many, many pages of exclusive farm use. Then you get into our little pages of industrial use. So everything's lumped under one article, but various sections when you actually, if you were to see the binder. So section 4.050 is the limited industrial section. And I did include everything so the court could see what that entire section looks like. It's not very lengthy, but I like with the definitions, we have like 100 different definitions, and I only put in the proposed definition. If you ever want to see how many definitions, I can always make a copy of that. But this was pretty lengthy as it was.
It's good reading.
So I was trying to be as efficient with your time as possible in the staff report.
We appreciate that.
So if you will look, we're turning to page 14. This is just a technical clarity on item number 16 to insert the word wireless. And the reason that's proposed by staff, and the reason I'm proposing that is when it refers to further criteria in the Gilliam County Zoning Ordinance, the word wireless is there. So it's not correlating.
It needs to match.
So I inserted the word wireless there, so when anyone else looks in here, they can see that the wireless matches Article 7, which is our conditional uses, and there's a section that refers to wireless telecommunications. It's just a technical thing, but I wanted to clean that up because I don't want there to be the question of, is telecommunications really wireless? Just cleaning it up. So that's what that bold was there. The reference was not accurate. There was a typo. So that's why it's crossed out for the section 4.040 D7, and it's been replaced with 7.020. I think that, 4 and 7 is very close on the keyboard, so I think that must have been what happened. And I know this may seem tedious to the court to point out these little things, but I can't change them without going through this process. So since we have this other stuff being put forward to the county court, I at least focus on this section to see if there's any little cleanup things we needed to do.
Like it.
Yes, very good.
I was trying to maximize coming forward and doing a public hearing process.
Yeah, for sure.
So then we go to the next page, page 15, and that's bullet B, conditional uses. Again, this is just a cleanup error that I have found, so that's why there's a strikeout, and then the corrected reference is in bold. And then you will, if you look further down on the page, there's the sub-note G, which has been added, community gathering place. And I do not provide a reference to Article 7 there, because if you look right above that, B, it tells you to go to Article 7 and the subsections of, so I didn't think we needed to be redundant, although I didn't catch, so that's why there's no explanation with, I just put the definition there.
Okay.
All right, the next page is page 16, and this refers to dimensional setbacks within the zone. And I have, staff has proposed to eliminate number 2, which says the minimum lot area shall be determined by the Department of Environmental Quality to be necessary for the protection of public health. It's, I've taken the approach that Gilliam County is better in a position to dictate those setbacks rather than rely on another agency. We can always coordinate and ask another agency, but really we should be driving what those setbacks look like. And so that was the proposed new number 2 and the proposed new number 3. The proposed number 2 is 2 acres. And this is for a minimum that we're saying. And when we're saying 2 acres, when you consider the limited industrial zoned areas, most of them are outside of the cities. That's why it's under county jurisdiction. So there isn't your water and sewer hookup, so you have to have your drain field, you have to have your septic system. And 2 acres is about appropriate if you're gonna put a structure on there and then be able to accommodate that. So if we find in the future that 2 acres is not enough or that it's too much, we can adjust that. But in talking to several different references and resources, they said 2 acres is pretty standard for industrial. So that's where I came up with a proposal for 2 acres. Number 3, and this is due to some of the situations and scenarios that have been presented to the planning department, I propose number 3. Number 3, and again, this is referring to setbacks. Uses adjacent to residential uses. A site obscuring fence shall be installed to buffer uses permitted in the limited industrial zone from residential uses. Additional landscaping or buffering such as diking, screening, landscaping, or an evergreen hedge may be required as deemed necessary to preserve the values of nearby properties or to protect the aesthetic character of the neighborhood or vicinity. I'm not going to say the specific area of the county that this has brought to my attention. However, there is a portion of the industrial land under Gilliam County jurisdiction that has been encroached upon by residential. And it's becoming a conflicting use or a potential conflicting use. However, the zone still is limited to industrial, and over the past 30-some, 40 years, we have allowed encroachment by residents into the industrial zone area. The code has allowed that. Some of the changes have happened in the last 40 years to limit that and deter from any additional residential use, but it is a potential conflict right now that I am encountering several different times. So that's my attempt. We'll see what happens if this can help, but I'm trying to alleviate the potential conflict that I already know that exists. So I'm proposing some additional standards. And I should note, none of this will take effect until or when the county court adopts it. So I can't go back on anybody and say, by the way, we made changes, now you need to put up a fence. This is all moving forward in time. All right, and so the next section of the Gilliam County Zoning and Land Development Ordinance would be Article 7, and this is the conditional uses section. This is section 7.020, standards governing conditional uses. In addition to the standards of the zone in which the conditional use is located and the general standards of this ordinance, conditional uses shall meet the following standards. So this is where there's some very specifics for if you're allowing a conditional use where we don't have to reiterate the same bulkiness under every section of the Gilliam County zoning ordinance to say, hey, look at Article 7 for that use, and you can put that, just the bullet of community gathering place under limited industrial, general industrial, or intermodal, and then refer to the other section, so you don't have to keep, because if you keep copy and paste, there's that chance that it might not get copied correctly. So we can just direct everybody, and it's worked pretty well. I don't mind that process and going through this book, so.
Well, the document is already huge.
It's very big. It's a very big binder. Since I've had to replace the binder a couple times because it's fallen apart on me. So it is a large document that you just have to use every single day. And so this is where I'm proposing, that was mentioned earlier, the item subsection X. And so this is the community gathering place. And the first standard for that would be number 1, minimum lot size, same as underlining zone, except 40 acres in the limited industrial zone. And this is where I previously mentioned this text amendment, although it can be applied greater than the limited industrial zone, we are tailoring some of the aspects for this specific project to ensure and protect the limited industrial zone. The Woolery project, or the board, or their nonprofit, has been conditionally granted 40 acres of limited industrial zone land owned by the city of Arlington, and it's all conditional on that they can get the land use approval. So this is where the 40 acres comes in for the limited industrial zone, because there was a discussion again amongst the planning commissioners of, okay, so this can come up and now you're going to have all these buildings in the industrial land that are community kind of centers or community gathering places, and now what if we do have a boom and we have all this industrial and now we don't have that because we're allowing some of this. So there aren't too many places where you're going to find 40 acres, I'll just preface that, in the limited industrial zone. And the areas in which you will find it, there's enough distance that it would probably warrant two of these similar structures. A lot of the limited industrial zone is 2 acres, 5 acres, 10, 7. They're very small. So again, so we're trying to accommodate something that's not traditional to the industrial zone, but making it work. So this, again, go back to why we put here, except for the 40 acres in the industrial zone for the community gathering place is what's being proposed. Then the number 2 bullet is for special events only, cannot operate as a daily service, food emporium, restaurant or catering. This was a huge discussion amongst the planning commission, and the 40-acre chunk is not far from the city of Arlington. It's right up there by the airport development zone, and the planning commissioners, one, for a restaurant or catering business, they deem that more of a commercial use. And commercial use in the limited industrial zone, this specific area, they did not want to have direct competition with those businesses within the city limits of Arlington because it's in such close proximity. So really this is for special events. It's not to have a day-to-day commerce going in and out of this building. Again, if something should come to the county court in the future, if we adopt this and say, hey, we've changed our thoughts and we want to change that, but this is in the discretion of the county court at some point if they want to change that. The planning commission is trying to put some sideboards on there right now to say, we do understand the city of Arlington's right there, they have commerce, they have industrial, let's let them prosper and not compete. And so that's why they came in the second bullet there. Number 3 is services provided include food and beverages, including alcohol beverages provided with the required licenses as obtained. Number 4, standard adequate domestic water and sanitary wastewater collection services are provided on site. The 5th standard, adequate street access, parking, and routing aisles must be provided. Roadways and parking lots must be gravelled or paved, and thus kept to a minimum. Standard 6, outside lighting must be provided and designed not to shine directly on adjacent properties and to shield glare. Number 7, standard hours of operation. Restrictions may be imposed as a condition of approval to ensure compatibility with additional uses. So really that is the nuts and bolts of what the Planning Commission is imposing if the community gathering place definition is allowed. Here's some standards they're saying this is what we at a minimum want to say they need to comply with. It was stressed at the Planning Commission meeting that these 7 standards, if there's something else that comes up, the Planning Commission does have the authority to impose something. If it falls within the realm of safety and those lines of protecting the environment and the citizens and the land, they can impose other conditions, but they thought these 7 were a good base and minimum into this section that would apply to that specific definition. Okay, so moving to page 18, let's take the staff report. So based on the staff report and the testimony provided or received at the Planning Commission public hearing, the Planning Commission recommends approval of the proposed definition and its inclusion in all the appropriate places of the Gilliam County Zoning and Land Development Ordinance to the Gilliam County Court. The proposed amendments would add community gathering place to the definition section of the Gilliam County Zoning and Land Development Ordinance. It would then be added as a conditional use in the limited industrial zone, further added to standards governing conditional uses under the dedicated subsection for community gathering place noted as 7.020X. So this would conclude my staff report to the county court regarding the proposed text amendments. So if the court members have any questions?
Do you guys have any questions?
Are there other counties that have this type of, or are we unique?
We are unique. That is a great question. That did come up during the Planning Commission meeting when they were kind of debating with the title, Community Gathering Center, Community Gathering Place, and the inherent kind of use and activity that would come with that definition is kind of a commercial use. And so most jurisdictions, this is going to be within the cities, the urban areas. It's not going to be under a county jurisdiction. About the closest that you'll have, especially here on the east side, would be if there's a fairgrounds or a Grange Hall that's in area outside of the urban areas. Like, you know, the Gilliam County Fairgrounds is within the city limits of Condon. So we don't have a fairgrounds that, I mean, a fairgrounds would fit this definition, but our existing fairgrounds is within the city limits right now. So that's about the closest definition you'd find. Or an example of something like this on the east side would be like a big range hall, or the fairgrounds is probably the best. You know, Wasco County, that's, I believe, Tybalt. And so that is, and Sherman County is outside. So those are outside the incorporated cities. So this is very unique. You generally do not see this because these kind of structures and buildings, you want them near the commercial centers. You want them where the people are for services. Again, the Planning Commission looked at the location of this, and it is very location specific, and they built in the 40 acres. They kind of tailored to this project. Again, there are areas of industrial land that exceed 40 acres, so this could go elsewhere as well. So it's not just solely only one project could absolutely take advantage of this language. But those were some of the comments and discussion that took place. So this is special. This is unique to Gilliam County. Yeah.
We like being unique.
It's kind of the way we roll these days.
Yeah, sure.
So, but yes, great question, thank you.
Other questions?
How much, remind me again, how much is the city giving?
40 acres?
40. Okay, so by including the language in here about the minimum lot size of 40 acres, that will make it so it can't be split off and...
Correct. That is a wonderful point, Commissioner. The 40 acres was also tied to the donation from the city, but also so that the Woolery could not go subdivide. They're being given the property for this use, and the Planning Commission did think, you know, then they need to use that, and they can't come back and subdivide and do other partitioning. And no, if they get the 40's got to be tied to this project. So yes, very, very good question that was discussed. And that's another reason why the exception of 40 acres.
Other questions for Michelle at this point?
I didn't have any more questions because I mean, it's very thorough and easy to understand.
Yeah, well done.
Well, good, since this is the first time the staff report we've heard that the county court.
You made it easy for us.
Right.
So at this time, I think we'll move on to receiving the public testimony. Proponents of the application will speak first, opponents of the application will speak second, and neutral testimony shall proceed third. And it looks like we have 3 who signed up as potential proponents. Is there anyone that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Go ahead, come on up, Rod. They've already signed it. And Rod, just for the folks at home too, can you say your name and address?
Ron McGuire, Olex, Oregon. So is that all I need? Do I need that 66325 address?
Michelle, do you need the whole thing?
He needs the whole thing, yes.
We need the whole thing.
66325 Upper Rock Creek Road, Arlington, Oregon, 97812.
Perfect.
I thought Michelle did a great job of putting that together. I wanted to thank her first thing. And then the second thing, we have the Wooleries hired Brad Baird to help us through this process, because I had no clue on what you guys were talking about half the time. I just want to get a building.
We're learning it too, Rod.
Oh gosh, so I've been half scared, and so I did write some notes down, and the number one south of this piece of property for us is the view. And some of you have been up there to see that. And the view is just a huge thing. Getting to the gathering place, that is what I first started with when I first wrote my first book. And we had gathering place because that's what it was going to be. And then we got away from that and went to regional event center because it, sounded cooler. So it's kind of funny how it went full circle right back to the gathering place. And it was brought up at the planning commission meeting. So I thought that was, so now that's our new motto again. It's on the sign up on the property, it says a gathering place. So I want to thank the county commissioner or planning commission for putting that back together for us. Because that's truly what it is going to be a gathering place. And then from that I want to talk about how our Oktoberfest went. We had extremely bad winds, and it tried to tear the tent apart, and it ripped it, and it shook it, and we had to I abandoned a tent at one time and told all my workers to get out. And so we lost about 3 hours in that process, but the stakes were working loose, and so we went and got trucks and pickups and trailers and ratcheted everything down the best we could. And it was horrifying. I was just a wreck because we don't know whether to cancel or move forward. And I was the man that was making all the decisions, and I go, God, if we cancel, we got a lot of money invested. And how do we pay all this back if we don't have this event? And we went ahead, it looked like we had things stabilized. And I kept watching, and then people started showing up. I go, wow. And anyway, we had probably 200, and I think we fed 225 people. We lost a lot of people because of the weather. Again, I want to thank the county for the county grant for having us have that tent. And some of you came up to the thing, and it was just, it was beautiful looking at the clear windows, but with all the trailers in front of it wasn't as cool as I wanted it. Anyway, I hope you guys have any questions for me. I think I know a fair amount about the project. I've been with it for a long time. It's in our 5th year of doing this process, but it's been fascinating for me to go through this. I'm not a good speaker, but this has been quite a project, and I'm happy for it. Anyway, any questions for me, I'll try to answer them the best I can.
I just think your dedication to the project is amazing.
Well, thank you. We had a lot of people, again, we had Pendleton people, Tri-Cities people, some Idaho people. So it was, and Matters people, I'm trying to think of, all the different ones that came. But it seems to, we're drawn from a large area, even with the windstorm that we had. I was surprised to have 225. A lot of the locals came up today. The tent did blow down on Sunday. And that tent was 160 by 50, and if you can imagine, that's a big space.
Oh, yeah.
And Sunday we cleaned everything out. Sunday morning, Sunday night we had another windstorm, and it took it down, made a pretzel out of it. So then that was another stressful event, because then the tent people said, you got to pay for it. And we had it in our contract. They were supposed to bring ballast blocks, the cement blocks and all this stuff, and they didn't do it. And then it was on their responsibility. They just tried to save some money by not sending another truck with the proper equipment. So they said they double staked it. Well, we told them we're in a high wind zone. So I had to put up with that stress for a few days, you know, saying that they were gonna, I said, well, Woolery doesn't have any money, so you can sue all you want. So, and I told them we were 510c3 and all that stuff. But all in all, I was happy with the event. I think some of my board members thought we would be extremely dissatisfied, but I said, look what we went through. And we had a lot, the mayor came up to the deal, looked things over, and that was almost every city councilor came up, except for one, but she was sick. And so, all in all, it went good. We got to show off the property. And
Well, we were sorry morning was come, but we had my sister's bill, and she was there, so.
okay.
We have a fabulous view out our back window, and we watch the tent go down.
Okay.
The tent go back up. Is the tent down or is the tent up? Because there was fog, and so, yeah. And we can see your little replica all the time, so from our back window, we're focused on your project.
Thank you. Well, I've never been so horrified in my whole, you know, I've been through a lot in my life, and I was just so shaken I couldn't hardly,
I can imagine.
and because my main goal was the safety of the public. And, you know, that went through my mind as we're doing things. I said, wonder how famous I'd be if we had to haul 3 or 4 people off in an ambulance. And so that was going over here, and this was going over here, and people were screaming at me, and it was just horrifying. But our main goal was that, oh boy, that would have been awful if someone would have got hurt. So I was taking that into consideration when I started making decisions. When we got to ratchet it down, we felt fairly secure. But then the back of the tent was coming apart. And then the tent was actually ripping too. And then you couldn't hear it. It's almost an hour before dinner time, and the light bulbs are breaking inside the tent. They're smashing against things, and I go, and you couldn't hardly hear that one end of the tent. The wind was bigger at the one end of the tent than the other, because it was coming up, somebody's explaining, it comes right up that cow path and just blasted it.
So are you making provisions with your building?
Yeah, and that's a good question. You know, the buildings that we have in mind are close to us. They come with a wind kit, 100-mile-an-hour wind. So that's extra strength and extra duty, and that's what we will do. And we'll probably have some retaining walls so to keep some of that, but we definitely don't want to block the view any more than we have to. But we always have the other side of the building on the east side where people can get away from the wind and still be outdoors is the plan. It was great for us to kind of place it where we did. And getting to that, Rick Watkins came up was my excavator guy, and the intention was to put the tent up on the more level part of the property. And talking with Rick, he said, but where is your barn going to go? And I said, well, I'd like to be down here. So he moved on a Sunday, practicing with these skid steer, and put us down where the barn was kind of going to go. And I go, wow, I didn't ask for that. I was trying to save money and keep it up on the level, or more level. There's lots of potholes. But when he did that, it gave us a chance to see what, for us as a committee, what it's really going to be. I can have that vision, but sometimes other people don't see that vision until it's there. So when people seen it happen, and then it was for the whole everybody to see. This is kind of what we have in mind. And a lot of people did come up to me and said, "Wow, we had no idea."
Fantastic. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think of anything. I just I've never been through this. I didn't know what to expect.
It's new for me too.
So I just scribbled some stuff down, but like I said, I just want to touch on a few things. There was one thing, I'm just trying to make our communities more cohesive, and it also was brought up about economic development. And as you guys know, I cook all over the country, and this is going to help our businesses. It's not going to hurt. Because our intentions is never to be a restaurant or me being a full-time caterer, but I'm getting a little bit old. But it'll help Arlington prosper. I mean, when I do a wedding for 300-400 people, that whole country fills up. And people come and stay overnight, and people go to the local restaurants, and they go to the gas stations, and they stuff. So Arlington's this is going to help them. And Condon too, because people are going to want to come up here and stay in a Condon hotel. So it's gonna help. It's not gonna hurt.
Having just planned a wedding, I can attest to the number of side businesses around the venue. When you're
Correct,
planning a
like
wedding.
you just did yours in Joseph, and I'm sure a lot of the people went shopping, which I was one of them, and probably spent too much money, but, you know, I'm a kind of a big guy in art, so I bought too many art pieces. But anyway, that's what happens when you bring people to your community. They branch out and spend money. Even when it's going to be built, you know, there's going to be workers that are going to be eating downtown and you know, staying in motels and doing things. But I'm very happy with the process and the project, and it seems like we're finally, when you go this long with the deal, you know, people can drop off and they get bored with it. But so far, we got a strong group and we're staying together.
Great.
And that's what our goal, our grant writer said, you know, when I went to the first grant workshops, they said, you got to be at least 4 years old before we will look at you. And so we were 4 years old, we were right. And once this land, if the land thing gets approved like we hope it will, then our grant writer can really get with it. And she's very good, she's one of the best in the state, so.
Great.
She's excited for us, you know, but her hands are tied until we have property.
Got it.
Okay, any other
That's it.
questions?
Thanks, Rob. I don't.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys.
Is there anyone else that wanted to speak in favor? How about anyone that wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Anything out there? Anybody who wishes to provide neutral testimony? Anybody? Bueller? Okay, staff comments. Does staff have anything to add in response to the testimony?
I do have just one more thing that wanted me to think of. So I just want to clarify to the county court today, the text amendments would allow for the Woolery for its first step. It does not give them a building permit, it does not give them a development permit. This is the first step to allow them to apply to the planning department for a use that they could submit an application for. Right now, they cannot submit an application for that structure in the zone that the property is in. And so we had talked about several different avenues. One was, can that property be annexed into the city because it's very close to the urban growth and city boundaries. And one of the avenues was, can we rezone the property? So there were different avenues before the Woolery decided on this path of, let's see if we can't just amend the current zone to make it so that we can apply to it for a use that will be allowable. And again, I'll just emphasize, this is a conditional use. The planning commission thought this was a little bit outside of industrial, but still it would be compatible, and they wanted to make sure that any application would come before the planning commission so that they could weigh in on it and really assess the impacts to the environment and to the citizens and everything. They didn't want this to be solely administratively done, and so that's another thing to point out with it being proposed as a conditional use, that this would come to the planning commission.
Thank you.
Does the court have any other questions of Michelle?
No.
Everything's clear. Okay, so we have the option now that we can close the hearing, or if you all think that additional testimony is necessary, we can continue it to a date certain. And if we continue it, then the record would remain open until the date of that next phase of the hearing. So my question for you guys is, how do you want to proceed?
I think we're ready to close the hearing.
I think so.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, I will now close the public hearing. And then is there further discussion? So the mechanism for this that we're looking at is an ordinance, as Michelle noted, sort of process. And so there was a draft ordinance in the your packets. And just like with any other ordinance, it requires 2 readings. So we would, and at least 13 days apart. So if the court feels comfortable with the ordinance, then we could proceed with the first reading today and then schedule the second reading for our December 18th meeting. So really just looking for some direction on whether you guys feel, do you have questions about the ordinance? Is there anything that we want to discuss on that, and then are we prepared to move forward with the first reading?
I'm prepared to move forward.
I am.
Okay, so is there a motion then?
I move to have the first reading of ordinance number 2019-03 by title only.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we have the first reading of ordinance number 2019-03 by title only. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I will read this. It's ordinance number 2019-03, Gilliam County, Oregon. It's an ordinance to adopt legislative amendments contained in the Planning Department file number L-2019-02 to amend the Gilliam County Zoning and Land Development Ordinance related to the limited industrial zone definitions and conditional uses allowed.
I move to accept the first reading of ordinance 2019-03 by title only.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the first reading of ordinance number 2019-03 by title only. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we have the first reading completed. The second reading will be scheduled for December 18th. We will be in Arlington that day for those who are in the audience and are interested in watching that. So we'll do a second reading, and then at that point the court can decide whether or not to adopt the resolution, or the ordinance, I mean. And that's it. That's all we've got. Thanks so
Thank
much,
you
Michelle, for all
your
your work. This was went
very
very
much.
smooth because of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Michelle.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course. Thanks for coming and testifying and being here. It's nice to have people in the audience.
Yes. You're welcome to stay.
Yeah, you don't have to leave.
Gotta go to work.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Okay, let's move on in the agenda to 5.0, the consent agenda. Remembering that we hold the executive session minutes from those.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of November bills pending review, consider approval of November 6th regular meeting minutes, and consider approval of November 25th special meeting minutes. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, moving on. Let's go on to 6.1, which is the building codes update. So I had a meeting with the city of Boardman before AOC, actually, so it's been a couple weeks ago now, and had a meeting with their building inspector and with their city administrator. And the good news is they seem very interested and willing to work with us in providing our building inspection services. There are several things that we need to work out prior to that happening. The first one is I need to confirm with the state that we in fact have our building department already established and that we have control of it. So that's the first thing. The state preliminarily told us yes. I just want to double check that before we move forward. The second issue that's somewhat related to that is there is a provision in ORS regarding requirements for where permits. Basically, it says that within the jurisdiction, so within the county, there needs to be a place that people can apply for their permits. So I need some guidance from our county council and probably the state on whether an online application fits that requirement, or if we need to actually have staff available within the courthouse here that can take those permits. So I just need clarification on that. If it is a staffing need, then that's something that we'll need to figure out where we want to house that. There's probably some natural synergy with the planning department, obviously, so that may be a natural place, but I want to get some direction on what the actual requirements are as we look at staffing. So if we have those two things in place and worked out, the next step basically would be to just negotiate an IGA with the city of Boardman. The one thing that is still sort of another component of that is the electrical inspections. We would likely need to find another entity to contract with that because the department, or the city of Ormond doesn't have an electrical inspector on staff. So we may end up talking to, and when we were at AOC, I talked to both Wasco County and Hood River County, who both have electrical inspectors on staff. So we may have to look at piecemealing that out and just doing electrical inspections with one of the other counties potentially. There's also the possibility that we may be able to convince the state that they should keep just the electrical inspection piece, because they do have electrical. They were very resistant to that in my first conversation with them. They would prefer we not go that route. But if it allows us to take back our building department, they may be amenable to some negotiation on that point. So, so that's sort of the update. I will start moving forward on checking some of those initial steps and our requirements. And then I've also let the city know that we would like to move forward with drafting an IGA, I presume. I want to check with you guys that that
Right.
sounds good. We had a conversation about pricing, travel expenses, all those kinds of things. Our initial conversation was that the fee structure would be identical to what is offered within Morrow County right now. So the anticipation, at least initially, was that there wouldn't be any additional fees for them to come to, say, Lone Rock to do an inspection. We'd have to work out the timing a little bit, our expectations on how often they're here. And the one thing they did raise, which has come up before, is, you know, if they have a single permit out in, say, Lone Rock, the ability to be able to group inspections together, so it's not necessarily an on-demand service, which frankly our folks have not had on-demand for years. So I think even having a date certain per week that they know an inspector's here would be an improvement. So, so anyway, with your consent, I'll move forward on checking those items that I mentioned and also starting the negotiation process on the IGA with the city of Boardman. And then pursuing our options on the electrical engineering, obviously bring that, or electrical inspecting, and bring that back. And here are some options that we could look at on that side.
So where are we with the McCog funds?
The McCog funds, Wasco County was notified of the 10-10-80 split. And Judge DeBolskas made that notification to them and let them know that if Wheeler County determines that they would still like a percentage, that needs to come out of Wasco County, of their 80%. It appears to be still in a holding pattern though, in terms of transferring the money, because Sherman County is still negotiating the situation with Wasco County. So they've been notified. So the two sort of components that are still up in the air is Wheeler County needs to make a definite decision on whether they want some of that money or not. And if they don't, then I think we at least we've got it worked out on apportionment, basically. But there's another issue on our end in that the budget, Nathan and I are gonna have to figure out if Wasco County cuts that check, where that money goes to, and if there's an appropriate place in the budget to capture it. It has to be segregated from general funds and other things. And so it may be that we need to ask Wasco County to hold on to that money until we're able to go through the budget process and put in place the appropriate mechanism to receive it and hold it.
Okay.
So I would say Wasco County hasn't raised any concerns about that. I think they feel like we've moved forward and that they have direction on how much they'll have. And so there's just a couple of little pieces that we need to work out, and some just process things that we may have to put in place to actually be able to accept it. And the other thing too that just to note for the record, when I talked to the city of Boardman and I mentioned the number of reserves that we have, they actually said that their building department, their inspection program does not need those reserves. So their recommendation was that we hold on to it, and if we need to, for instance, pay for staff to be able to do, that could be used on the
That was my
administrative
next question.
side
Adam's favorite.
for building. So if we end up needing to have staff in the courthouse available to accept permits, that potentially could be used as an administrative fund, basically, to fund those costs. The other thing, in the other IGAs that the city of Boardman has with Morrow County and with the city of Oregon, their current structure is that they keep 75% of those permit fees and 25% is remitted back to the partner. So basically, they would take 25% of the fee, the other 25% would come back to the county and would sit in that administrative fund. So-
The administrative funding could also probably be used for whatever we decide to do with the electrical portion of this.
Exactly.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah, so it is limited to, it has to be building codes related, but it could be for administration, or if there's another agreement where we need to pay one of the other counties for, say, travel fees, if we're working with Wasco County or something, then that could offset those fees on that side, so.
Good.
It's still a little bit up in the air, but I feel like we've made good progress, and it's starting to form a solution. Realistically, I think we're still looking at being with the state through this fiscal year, just to get everything lined up.
So we get our budget in place.
Yeah, and all of those things.
Figure out how to take the lead.
But we're starting to get some clarity on
Yes,
the money
yes.
and how to structure it, so.
Progress.
I will
We're making
keep you
progress.
posted
Okay.
on what we hear on some of these issues. Any questions about that?
I think you answered my question.
Okay. 6.2, DMV Courthouse ADA update. So I have some good news, which is the DMV, as a reminder, the DMV had sent us a letter a couple months ago raising some issues about ADA compliance concerns in the building, and basically saying we had till the end of the year to fix them or they were out of here. Jeff Schott and I have had several conversations with DMV and with DAS, who, Department of Administrative Services, who handles the leasing for state agencies, basically. And so we've gone back and forth with them, and the good news is that one of the issues they raised was with the lift, which would have been incredibly expensive to upgrade, because we would have probably had to completely pushed out the back wall of the courthouse to accommodate a larger size lift. They have said that they now feel comfortable that it is compliant, and so they are dropping that as an issue. So the remaining issue is the bathrooms primarily, and they've requested that their DMV office be on the same floor as the ADA compliant bathrooms, which is upstairs, obviously. So right now I'm exploring with DMV either moving them upstairs and doing a shuffling of the office space so that they are on the same floor, or they had originally raised the idea of cost sharing to do upgrades. And so my response back to DAS has been, are you guys still on board for paying for bathroom upgrades? So if so, then I will likely be bringing back to the court, would we like to consider doing an upgrade of the downstairs bathrooms to make both of them ADA compliant, kind of take advantage of the fact that we have cost share coming in from the state, and remove one of the ADA barriers that we have in the building, which may make some sense. So that's sort of the update. DMV's not going anywhere. They've sort of extended the end of the year deadline that they gave us. They're extending because it's on their end right now that we're waiting for information. And they've just asked us if we decide to do the bathroom updates to give them a date of when those would be completed. So we've kind of moved off of the we're out of here kind of position they were in before. So that's the update. And as soon as I hear back from them on that cost sharing, then I'll come back with the court with some options that we can explore and see which direction you guys want to go in.
Okay.
Questions on that?
That sounds good.
That one was good news, because I was a
Yes.
little concerned about
Yes.
how we were going to figure out a new lift in the back.
Yeah, that would have been very costly.
And that they were leaving us at the end of the year.
Exactly. So for now, they're still here, and we'll sort out the details here in the coming weeks.
Okay.
6.3, Arlington Saddle Club request for county property update. I just heard back from our attorneys last night, and so that's why I'm not making this an action item. This is an update, and then we'll hopefully take action on the 18th.
Okay.
So their recommendation, after looking at the property size and the value, and the fact that it is unsuitable for a dwelling because of how it's zoned and a number of other issues, allows the county through RS to do a direct sale. We actually don't have to surplus it. We don't have to do bids. We're able, because it's, you know, I think the value is, if a property is under 15,000, and this one is, I think, 900 and something was what it was appraised at. And so our council feels confident that we can just do a direct sale with the Arlington Saddle Club, and that would probably be the cleanest, easiest way to manage it. In order to do that, that process is you have to publicly notice that you're going to sell the property and who you're going to sell it to. And then there's a 15-day waiting period basically after you notice it before we can actually sell the property. So our council is recommending that we move forward with noticing that we are planning on selling it, if that's the consensus of the court. Then on the 18th, what we would do is put a resolution before the court, basically as the documentation that we're selling it for the record. So it's just a very simple one-page, here are the findings that we made, basically saying that it's not valued over 15,000, it's unsuitable for dwellings for these reasons, basically laying out the reasons why this is applicable under ORS for us to be able to take this action.
Okay.
I have reached out to the Saddle Club to just update them on, here's where I think we're going with this, and are you guys in a position where you can purchase it, all of that kind of stuff. They said absolutely, that this seemed like this was a workable thing, and that the price that we would be setting would just be the appraised value that Chet has on the books for it. So, so it seemed pretty straightforward.
Yes.
And all of those things. So what I'm looking for today is, are we at a consensus where we want to move forward with that? I don't need a motion, just need consensus so that Teresa can get that in the paper and noticed.
Definitely.
Okay, so I will move forward with that, and I will move forward with noticing and then the documentation will be on the 18th, so we actually have time to read it before we vote on it. And I'll let the Saddle Club know that we're moving forward, and so that would allow us possibly to even sell it before the end of the year, potentially. So, and then legal counsel will draft all of the documents we need to be able to sell it. Okay, any other questions on that?
I do not.
All right, let's move on to 7.1 under new business, which is consider approval of the John Day Basin TMDL implementation plan. Okay, so the TMDL is the total maximum daily load. And this is basically a requirement so let me step back. Department of Environmental Quality has a water quality management plan for a lot of the major river basins in the state. They finalized their plan in 2010. In that plan, they identified us as a designated management agency, DMA, which means that we are responsible for implementing this total maximum daily load for the John Day River. The responsibility includes developing and implementing a TMDL implementation plan, which has to be submitted to DEQ. We were notified that this was our responsibility in November of 2010. We were notified again in May of 2012. So far, Gilliam County has failed to comply with that requirement. DEQ sent us a letter basically saying they would give us until December 18th to get our ducks in a row, or else. So basically what I did was, because we have so many fantastic partners who have all sorts of plans for primarily water temperature is what we're looking at for the John Day. And rather than recreate the will, I just went to Herb Winters at SWCD, and he drafted this initial plan. And I gave it a couple of reviews to just mostly do typo checks and things like that. So, and so the plan that is before you is sort of a compilation of all of those existing plans that SWCD, NRCS, that whole gamut of partners that work on water issues within the county have together collectively created over a number of years, sort of consolidated those into one place. And so my recommendation would be that we not recreate the will and just go ahead and adopt this and get this taken care of so that we're in compliance with DEQ. And it doesn't require, as I said, these were all existing plans, so it's not really creating anything new. And Herb assures me that they're able to, SWCD as our partner in actually implementing these steps, is able to handle that, those functions. They're already doing that as a daily course in their work, and so this should get us into compliance with that.
Does he feel that this would be acceptable to DEQ?
Yes. Yeah, this is based in part, Sherman County adopted theirs, and so they were kind enough to send us what they adopted. And so Herb took that structure and made it, and incorporated the Gilliam County plans into it. And that was approved by DEQ, the Sherman County one. So
It was an interesting
I was
read.
going to say, this was pretty
It
educational.
really was.
there's a lot of work going on in the John Day
Yes.
that
it
I
was.
think would be, people should take a look at it. Yeah.
I'm saving it because it was,
Oh,
it
yes,
was, it was
definitely.
good. I had to look up a couple words. It's like-
And reread some stuff a couple of times. Make it make sense, yes.
So if it looks good, I would just be looking for a motion to approve it.
I move we approve the John Day Basin Total Maximum Daily Load Implementation Plan as presented.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the John Day Basin Total Maximum Daily Load Implementation Plan as presented. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Hallelujah.
Yes, clean that up. Yes.
It's only
Off our case.
only 9 years. Like,
Okay.
we're right on schedule.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to 7.2, which is consider approval of appraiser FTE adjustment request. Chet, do you want to just sit back there, or do you want me to?
Either way, if you guys have questions, I can come up there.
Okay, I'll give an overview, and then if you guys have questions of Chet, we can do that. So we received a request from Darlene, our appraiser, to consider reducing the full-time equivalent for her position to 0.75. The request is prompted by personal need, health of a loved one that she's tending to, but also sort of a shift right now in the assessors and appraisers kind of focus on what they're doing. So right now, their appraiser work, or reappraisal work is suspended to allow Darlene to focus on some other projects, like the software conversion that they've been doing, getting some of the documentation and things up to snuff so that everything, all their records are up to where they need to be, they're reliable, all those kinds of things. And so there's a request from our assessor in here, basically suggesting that that we support the request, Darlene's request, and also asking that that be made for about 2 years with the possibility that we could extend it. The recommendation here is that we go ahead and grant the request. I should note that Lisa also alerted the union that this was a request that was happening. They had ample time to respond to Lisa and have not raised an objection to it, I think is safe to say. So the recommendation is that we do grant the request. This is a temporary reduction in the FTE for the appraiser position to 0.75 for the remainder of this current fiscal year, and then for the next fiscal year, so that'd be 18 months with extensions after. So I think, during that next budget cycle leading into it would be what, 20, 21, 22, then we can look at that FT at that point and see if it needs to be extended further and for how long. So any questions on that for me, for Chet, for Lisa?
The work she's doing to, with the software conversion, those are things she can do from home as well as
If she needs to.
she
yeah.
needs to. Okay.
If she needs to be home, she can also remote in and do the work from home.
Okay.
And with our new flight that we're doing now, that will take care of finding any changes in, construction. So we'll be able to just go directly to those tax lots and capture the value without having to do a mass appraisal. So basically the field work that you would have to do going property to property, we can suspend without missing the new value that's being added.
With the new software.
Some
With
efficiency.
the new flight, we're doing like pictometry.
Yeah,
Oh,
that we
oh,
approved.
right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
What do you use to remote in? Just out of curiosity.
What do we use?
Yeah.
We have, what are they called? What do you mean? How do
I
we-
mean, like, is it AnyDesk, logging
VPN.
in? What
With
kind of-
VPN.
VPN.
Yeah.
And is it just, I'm just curious because we're talking about it, but is it available, to how widely available is that to other employees? I mean, because I think it's great, so I'm just curious, is any other departments using it, or is it just,
That I don't know who.
are you guys
uses
breaking
it.
ground?
So
That's a
part of
question
it,
for
yeah,
Chris.
and part of it is Kelly, depending on permissions needed, and it's really kind of up to the nature of the job. So not everybody needs, I mean, a lot of our folks need to be in the office, those kinds of things. And so it's kind of been up to the discretion of, there's usually a request made to Kelly by a supervisor, and then that request often will come to me to see if that's an appropriate, and then our IT folks can adjust. So some people are locked out of certain files, other people have access to theirs, those kinds of things. So it's kind of a case by case depending on what's needed.
Right.
So if you need it, go talk to Kelly and then me.
So I think she had 2 VPNs that were available that could be used at the same time, last I knew, but that could have changed.
Yeah. So if this is something that we are amenable to, basically what we'd be looking at is a motion to approve that adjustment. And then we included a letter here, and this is mostly just as documentation for Darlene and also for Ellen, so that when the auditors go to look at that and her FT is matching with the salary schedule that we approved, rather than put the entire salary schedule back on the court's agenda, this was just a simpler way to make that documentation official. So if there's support, we would need to do that and then approve that I can sign the letter to be put in the file.
Well, having been in this type of situation where I was caring for a loved one and had VPN and was able to work from home, it's very beneficial for our employees and family.
Yeah.
And the county as well, because we're not losing that knowledge and the skills that Darlene brings from her undeniable experience
Skill
in
sets
this
and,
particular job set. Any
Yeah.
questions?
No, I don't. I like the fact that we have the flexibility to offer this.
Yeah, and at this
And
point,
that
to
Chet
try
is-
to
and that
replace
Chet is-
her
Yeah, no.
is not really an option where we're at conversion, because we'd be starting over probably with a trainee that has no experience,
Right.
and it'd be definitely a hardship for the county and our office.
There's also just the human side.
Yes.
We want to be a
There
good
is.
place to work,
Yes.
so.
Yes.
So do we have a motion?
Oh, okay. I move to make the position of Gilliam County Appraiser a .75 full-time equivalent for the remainder of fiscal year 1920 and for fiscal year 2021, with possible extensions thereafter, and to approve this letter of employment documenting the same.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we make the position of Gilliam County Appraiser a .75 full-time equivalent for the remainder of fiscal year 2019-2020 and for fiscal year 2020-2021, with possible extensions thereafter, and to approve the letter of employment documenting the same. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll get this signed, and I should also note that we said in the letter that this would be effective January 1. So
Okay.
I'll just give Ellen enough time to switch everything over, and Darlene has some stuff she needs to do on her end with hers and other things. So
Right.
that gives her some time to get everything in order. All right, sounds good?
Yeah. Hers takes 92 days, does she know?
She's ready.
Okay.
She's on it.
She's on it.
She's on it. Okay, so we're going to move on to 7.3, which is first reading of ordinance 2019-04, an ordinance designating the office of Gilliam County Commissioner as nonpartisan, referred for the May 2020 primary election. So this issue has come up before us several times on whether we wanted to consider referring a ballot measure to the voters on making the commissioner positions nonpartisan. I gave this to Christy Monson down in Eugene to help us with it, our county council. So basically, when we are changing the mode by which local offices are elected, we legally, by ORS, have to put that on the ballot. So it's not something that we can unilaterally say commissioners are nonpartisan. It actually has to be referred. The mechanism to do that is by basically drafting an ordinance, or approving an ordinance. Same process we just went through here with planning, where we have, it's a two-step reading. And then what would happen is basically, if this is approved, if the ordinance is approved after a second reading, would go to Marion Weatherford as the DA to draft the ballot language. That then has to be noticed, and there's a bunch of rules about how long that notice period is and when it needs to occur. Ellen would do that to let people know that this is a potential ballot measure. It allows the public to challenge it potentially, the title and those kinds of things.
Okay.
And then if there's no challenge to that, then there's a document basically that gets filed that puts it on the ballot. So it would put it, the way this is currently written, it would appear on the May 2020 primary ballot. But because we would already have a race going, commissioner race going, it would not become effective until the next commissioner election. So it would sort of push that out until 2022, that primary election. So for Leslie's seat, if there's, in the interim, if there was a retirement or something happened and there was a replacement, that would have to go under the old sort of partisan way that it's replaced. Under the new version, then that would change to the nonpartisan. So when Sherry's seat is up, that position would be nonpartisan. Yeah, so it's a pretty simple, 1.5 page document. Christy looked at it, drafted it, and it's really pretty straightforward, I think. So
26 of the 36 counties in Oregon are nonpartisan.
I looked that up last night.
Me too.
I got my little book out.
Me too. Had my cute little book out.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it would tell us in the counties that were partisan whether those people were Democrats or Republicans.
I was wondering about that too.
But it didn't.
But I finally found that little nice little
Yeah, but
chart.
it did. Yes. Yeah. But that book's amazing.
It is
Yeah.
pretty good. I did that too because I received a phone call night before last, from one of our citizens that is concerned about this. And so after talking with him a little bit, I liked, when I read the ordinance, I reminded myself after reading it that, it says in here that the court finds it reasonable and appropriate to ask the electors
Right.
whether the office of Gilliam County Commissioner should be nonpartisan.
Right.
So, as soon as I read that, it was like, all we're doing is
Right.
just asking what people want.
We're putting it out there.
Yeah, putting it out there.
Yeah.
So, it made me feel
Yeah,
better
we're not
about it.
making the decision.
And, one of the things that was brought up at one of the previous court meetings In the event of an appointment, say this went through in the event of an appointment in the future, how would we provide for community involvement in the putting forth names to be considered? Is there a way to, like right now, how it is, it's definitely by the two parties, but.
Yeah, so there's still, legal counsel is still looking into that, but what we're exploring is just basically putting in place, either by another ordinance or resolution, that process. There's really not a need to put it in place unless the voters agree to it. So rather than put in place something that is not applicable because it will continue to be partisan, I think that would likely allow us to be able to, before we're in that position, go ahead and decide what that process would look like. And the court obviously, the court is the appointing authority, so really the court is able to establish what that process looks like. I think if it's the same person who had expressed concern during our last public meeting, I think it behooves us to be considerate of how to incorporate that, and that future courts would hopefully also do that, basically.
But there has to be, in those other 26 counties, some structure that's been, that we could examine and see if that's
a process to include the public.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we're in agreement to move forward, then I would we would need to proceed with the first reading of the ordinance. And then again, on the 18th, we would do the second reading. It would become effective 90 days after that because we did not declare an emergency, which is fine with the timeline. And then that would start the process of getting it on the ballot.
I move to have the first reading of ordinance number 2019-04 by title only.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to have the first reading of ordinance number 2019-04 by title only. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I will read this. In the County Court for Gilliam County, Oregon, ordinance number 2019-04, an ordinance designating the office of Gilliam County Commissioner as nonpartisan, referred for the May 2020 primary election.
Okay, I move to accept the first reading of ordinance number 2019-04 by title only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the first reading of ordinance number 2019-04 by title only. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, let's do court member reports. Ladies, we have 30 minutes.
Keep it quick.
Keeping my eye on the thing.
I did the opposite way that you did, but okay. Oh, I attended a North Central Public Health District meeting on November 12th. One of the things that continues to come up in our meetings is the salary schedule and the situation of public health that we are very behind. So I'm thinking at some point in time, we may consider as a court if we want to increase our contribution for that purpose. The following day, on the 13th, I went on an irrigation project tour with Kip Krebs, and it was very interesting. I asked him if he wanted me to report back some things to the court, and he said, let me get my ducks in a row a little bit. So I'll wait until he gives me the word.
More to come later.
Yes,
Okay.
but I did talk a little bit down at the conference with Nate about who can we talk to get some information on the process of starting an irrigation district if they so decide for that and want more information. And I found out that Commissioner Perkins from Hood River County is
He's a big irrigation guy.
expert.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it was good to make that contact, which happened at the
Yeah.
AOC conference, which we all attended the week of the 19th. I jotted down some of the sessions I was able to attend. I mean, it was everything from public health, mental health. The one on mental health and public safety officers I thought was exceptionally good.
Yes, that was the best one.
Yeah,
Wasn't
it was very good.
It's very moving.
I teared up.
I shed one or two.
Building code, substance abuse. Another one that I thought was interesting was the one on isolation and loneliness of the aging community. That was a very good one. And then, of course, labor and employment law, which was great. We also got the big award, which was a Silver Safety Award from CIS.
Yes.
So I will let you guys take that. Oh, and then that Saturday, I came back after being exhausted a week away in Eugene and came up to the Fall Festival in Condon. And that was great fun, and went and had burgers and supported the fire district fundraiser, which was very good. I'm sad to say I'm not going to be able to attend the Christmas lunch on December 17th. Very disappointed. So I'm hoping that maybe next year we could put a little particular reminder about maybe discuss a little earlier, so we set our Arlington meeting to maybe be earlier in the year, not the last meeting, and then that way it'll work with my schedule a little bit better.
Yeah.
My husband is having a little, I have to take part of the end of the week off for a little procedure thing, so I just can't do it that week. So I'm sad.
I'm sad too.
That's it for me.
All right, Sherry.
Okay, so I attended a NORCOR meeting on November the 7th, an ongoing discussion of the structure of the administrator and what we're going to do with that, and just basic business. We are meeting again on the 19th to continue that discussion. I think we're starting to make a little progress, hopefully. Something in place. I have citizens advisory at 5 o'clock on December the 17th.
Orlando?
Yes, for waste management. And I intend to go to that, although our lunch is at 1. And I intend to go to that. I was going to go to the Fall Festival. I had it on my calendar, but then my granddaughter was running cross-country in Eugene on Saturday after our trip to Eugene, so I just hung out down there. And
How did she do?
She has shin splints, so not the time she wanted, but she qualified. She could have gone to Wisconsin in December. Why would anybody have a cross-country meet in Wisconsin? But that would be the national.
In December.
In December.
It's hardcore.
Yeah,
Hardcore.
yeah. So anyway, that's me. That's it. That's all I have.
All right. So I've got a number of stuff. I'll start with, because Matt had asked on Frontier Telenet an update. I cannot remember now during our last update where we were on getting the USAC funds, the latest one. But where we are now is we basically have 1 quarter that we're still waiting on. So the last of the 2 years that were still outstanding, everything's come in, but just the last quarter of 20 would be 2018-19. So it would have been that previous fiscal year that we just finished a couple months ago.
Cool.
So we are, I think, submitting the paperwork for that to get that final payment in. And still working on the Roosevelt upgrades that we discussed during the last one, getting some bids to fix the roof and the electrical. And then I am fully anticipating that in January, which is our next meeting, that we will have quite a discussion about management, what that looks like, and possibly, as I noted before, putting together an RFP. So I'm going to take the first stab at drafting it. Just from previous experience, it's better to come in with paper and negotiate something on paper than to start with nothing. So I'm hoping that that will move us forward in making a decision to go out and see what's out there. So that's kind of the update. It is much more stable, I would say, than it has been previously. It's actually nice to have things starting to be in order.
The last meeting was very calm and
Yes.
business.
It's very
business
nice.
Done, yeah.
As I like to say, it's making county government boring again. So we like to make county government as boring as we can
Right.
on things like emergency communications.
Yes.
When's your next meeting?
It is the same day as Tri-County.
29th.
The
Wednesday, the
29th,
29th
and
of
it'll
January.
be, I think we're in Morrow, or in.
Sherman County.
Yeah, in Sherman County, in Morrow that day.
At 11:30, the meeting's being set.
The receipt of those USAC funds, how is that affecting the repayment of the $100,000 loans from the other two counties?
They are paid off.
That's a good question.
Great.
So, yeah, after we had to, because those funds weren't initially anticipated in the budget, and so we had to do a supplemental, I think we talked about, in order to receive them. And so we did that, and so yeah, and part of, we have to be careful, I should note, that those USAC funds are still for school service.
Right.
So they can't just be funneled into the system.
Right.
They have to be used for certain purposes. But when we accepted the loan from Wheeler County, we made clear that the reason we were accepting it was because there hadn't been funds to provide on the school service side, basically. And so it's an allowable use to pay back that loan. And so Wheeler County is paid in full. They're paid off, and Sherman County was paid previously out of it. So both counties are whole. So yeah, we're in good shape right now.
Good shape we're in.
Yeah, for the shape we're in, we're in good shape. Another issue that will be coming up before us, Rob Turry reached out to me from PCDC. The county's memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreement, MOA, MOU, that we signed regarding the housing money. Somewhere along the line, PCDC was under the impression that up to 10% of that could be utilized for administration, so that they could use that in administering the grant. The legal document that the court agreed to does not have that language in it. So PCDC has expended a portion of those funds for administration, but there doesn't appear to be authority provided by the court to do so. And so Teresa and I have been digging in to those previous court minutes, and thankfully some of those were in the recording time, so we can actually see the whole conversation, to see if it was ever discussed and was just inadvertently omitted, or whether it just was by choice from the previous court not included. So depending on what we find, if it looks like it was the intention and it was an oversight, well, actually, in either case, we'll probably be coming back for some direction from you guys on whether you think that that is allowable, and if so, we'll need to clean that up so that it's clear what the money can be used for, if we intended for that to be partly used for administration of the program or not. So I just wanted to flag that for you. That was kind of a late thing that came in, and so I didn't have time to get the documentation. That's why it's not officially on the agenda today. But I wanted to flag that for you, that it'll probably be on the 18th. So give some thought to your comfort level on that.
Okay.
Also, had a meeting with Ron Wilson at the Port of Arlington yesterday afternoon to discuss the Willow Creek situation. Basically, next steps, so that you guys know, is Ron has asked me to put together a written sort of proposal of how we may remedy this disagreement. And so based on previous discussions, I'm planning on making some suggestions of how we may be able to remedy that with whether that is a project, a partial payment, a combination of those. So we're going to begin that discussion, at least in paper, back and forth.
Okay.
So I'm going
You're gonna go to council or
yes.
get their recommendation?
So council's going to help me with that, and then we will get something sent over to them. Most likely, because their meeting is next Tuesday, I think, which is really not probably feasible to get something solidly over to them and get their feedback on it. And we're probably looking at January before we actually hear an initial return from them. So
In this law.
yeah. So just wanted to let you know. those discussions are continuing. And then I also, let's see, had a meeting yesterday with Arlington TV Co-op about their grant request that we denied, and talked through some of the reasons why we denied it, some of our concerns. Suggested to them that if they are planning to come back in for a second request for the next upcoming, that they look at revamping their business plan and giving us a clearer picture of what that looks like, getting really realistic with the numbers on deployment, how their TV request would fit into their long-term sustainability, all those kinds of things. So we talked through that, a number of marketing ideas and some things. One of the ideas that came out of that was the idea of doing a WebWorks seminar. The city of Condon did one with McKed. And it's basically like a community event where people can come and learn different ways that technology can be utilized. So they had, they had an instructor from BMCC talk about agricultural sort of usage. You could talk about, telemedicine, those kinds of things. So we're talking about maybe working with McKed to do one in Arlington, where potentially people could also sign up, get on the list to be signed up with TV Co-op. So use it sort of as an educational tool, but also as a potential marketing tool for the Co-op. So I wanted to put that on your radars, that I'm going to reach out to Carrie Pipinage over in McKed and see if McKed had some money that they were putting towards that, to see if they may be willing to do one in Arlington. They've been doing them all over the region,
Right.
so I think that might be useful.
There you go, yeah.
I finally filled out that broadband survey that Nate had emailed us. And one of the things it did was, during the survey, you were supposed to do a speed check on your computer, and I got the speed back, and I'm thinking, doesn't seem very good. So I took a screenshot of it, I texted it to John at TV Co-op, and I said, shouldn't my numbers be higher than this?
And what was your response?
He said, yes, they should. Well, first he asked me, are you streaming, were you doing this, that? No, yes, they should be. I'll look into it. But his response was very quick.
Helps to
Yeah,
have
I need to
local
ask that
service
question too.
on that. And then the other meeting I had yesterday, I had a busy
Okay,
afternoon in Arlington yesterday.
Okay.
I met with the Arlington Library Board. And if you recall, when we were reviewing the grant requests during the budget cycle, when we had operational ones coming in, one of the suggestions from the grant review committee was that we consider pursuing an IGA with the Arlington Library to do, and that would allow them, that would pull them out of the grant funding stream, put them as a permanent line item in the budget. So they are asking if we are open to doing that, to considering that. And so I'm looking for an initial read from you guys, that that's something, if we wanted to pursue it, it would be an IGA with the city, because the city is the actual entity that governs them. So it would have to be with the city. But I'm looking for a read on whether that is something we want to pursue. And if so, I'm happy to start those conversations.
What, how much do they usually ask for? I mean, it used to be around.
Well, their letter and correspondence said 22,000.
That's right.
But in Condon, we have Gilliam County Library,
We do.
which we totally fund. So I think that we need to do the same thing and have an IGA and fund the Arlington Library as part of our county, as opposed to support it.
I like that. And not to go off on a tangent, because I know where we're at.
Got 12
But
minutes.
that reminds me about the thing I've been thinking about, the Arlington Golf Course. We have an IGA currently with the swimming pool in Condon. So every time, at the point where that golf course grant came up, I was thinking to myself, why don't we have an IGA with the city of Arlington for the golf course? Just something to throw out there and maybe think about. Chew on. But back to this, I think it would be good.
Yeah. Okay, so what I will do is reach out to the city and let them know that we are open to that, and just see if they are open to signing that. I don't know why they wouldn't be, since that puts in some stability for their library.
Right.
I can't imagine why they would be against that. So we'll start that conversation. I'm not anticipating that is probably going to come up until early next year sometime. And so I did tell the library board for now to please still submit a grant, because it's easier for us to pull it out of the pile than it is to add them later.
Right.
So they're aware of that and just appreciated us even considering it. So, and I'll also let them know that we're going to be pursuing it, the library board, because they had made that request. But I just
Okay.
wanted to get a take on how we were feeling about it.
Good.
Okay, that's all I've got on those issues. Announcements, next meeting, and adjournment. So our next regular meeting is December 18th, and it will be in Arlington. It's going to be scheduled for 10. However, I would like to schedule, and we discussed last time, the idea of doing a work session at 9
Okay.
to do a review of the grants
Oh, okay.
and see, were those parameters
Right.
good? Do they need to be
Right. The actual grant form
the
itself.
form, the parameters,
process.
all of those kinds of things? I'd like to do a review of that so that, sort of in my head, here's what I'm thinking. One, we need to finalize what the reporting looks like. So
Okay.
Kelly's working on some drafts to share with us that we can look at to see, because I'd like to have a standardized form that people, because
Right.
every single one
Yes.
of them is required to report to us. And we've been asking, people have been asking where the form is. So I'd like to get that finalized with you guys in our work session.
Okay.
And then I'd also like to look at the parameters, see if we're comfortable with those. If we don't, if there's not major changes, we might even on the 18th be able to approve for the next year. Otherwise, we'll do it the first week in January. Because I would like for these to go out in mid-January, which would give people, and ask them to come back in late February, early March, which would then give the review team about a month to do the review and get their recommendations to us before the budget cycle starts in April.
Okay.
Could I get an email of the current,
Yes.
our current process?
We'll put them in the court packets
Could I get it
too.
before that?
Yeah, we can do that.
That'll help me get my questions ready and
Yeah.
more time to think about it.
The other thing I'll do, yeah, we can send it to both of you. The other thing that I'm planning on doing is sending out a letter to the applicants from last year, asking for feedback.
Yes.
What worked,
Yeah.
what didn't,
What
and
was-
inviting them
What was too
to,
confusing, what did they think might be more helpful?
exactly. So as I've been meeting with some of those folks, I've also been kind of queuing that up, of like,
Okay.
hey, we're gonna be in Arlington on the 18th.
Oh,
If you've got feedback, let us know, was this
Right.
confusing, those kinds of, I mean, most of the feedback was that originally the timeline was too short, which was sort of, we knew that was gonna be an issue.
Right, and that was a one-time, too short thing, that it's not gonna happen again.
Exactly,
Now have our process.
exactly. Other than that, we already touched on the Christmas or the holiday lunch that we're having on the 17th.
Can you bring me back a plate?
Maybe.
If you ask nice.
Maybe. I'll bring you some prime rib.
And I'm trying to
Just bring
think,
some for your husband too.
Maybe just a dessert.
all right, let's discuss
I'll
lunch
see if-
after.
Okay,
I'll see if I can get
Um,
home with some for you.
Any other announcements that I'm forgetting? I mean, we've got the holidays upon us, but I don't think there's really a lot. Oh, the other thing, just to note, for the 18th, is the waste management permit review will be on the docket.
Okay.
So that may actually be a meeting that goes over 2 hours, I'm sad to say, because that may take a considerable amount of time to do the review. So
Okay.
just flagging that, we may be continuing into lunch. And I think that's it on my end. Any other announcements? All right, well then, it is 11:54, and I will adjourn this meeting.